Uh, I don't think there's an answer to it. I don't have a clue. The guys that have the best luck or the best problem solving is family.
Right, right.
Yeah, really make your son work or talk your brother into making his son work.
Yeah.
And once they get going, they're fine. I mean, I've had young guys working for me that were just excellent. And I've hired young guys that didn't even know what a cordless drill was, and that's a little bit more of a challenge when you get somebody that doesn't have any knowledge to help you to begin with. But you can still make it work if you can just get them to come every day.
Well, I've got two guys that I can pull from. One's a firefighter, so his days off, he'll help me once in a
Sure,
while.
sure,
And then one guy's got a spray foam business, and when he's down, he'll help me on his days when he has nothing to do.
sure.
So that's better than nothing.
Sure, sure. Oh, well, excellent, excellent. Yes. And that's the other thing that guys got to seek those part-timers like firefighters and
Right.
EMTs and such. And a lot of the I talked to two young guys the other day that are working specialist jobs in a hospital, and they work 312s.
Hmm.
And so there's a similar thing to the firefighters. So maybe there is getting more creativity out there in the job force. The hospitals are so short of help that they seem to be leaning towards 12s as more attractive to the
Right.
younger generation, or they're covering more
Yeah.
time. I took it as, hey, we need this service to be provided 12 hours a day, so I'm going to do the whole 12. So sure, there's all kinds of things that
Right.
at
Yeah.
least sound good on
And
paper, but still getting one of them to come to work every day.
yeah. Well, and it seems like the people who got jobs are willing to work extra, and the other ones just don't want to do anything.
Sure, especially when you put them in a crawl space. But
Right.
I always paid bonus for a crawl space because I looked at too many faces on the way to the job when you mentioned crawl space. They all wanted to quit. So I said, I got to fix this somehow before I'm in that crawl space by myself.
Right.
And
Well, I
so I
charge more for
started,
crawl.
what
I
part?
charge more for crawl spaces, so I should pass that on. I agree with you.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Once I started paying a bonus for crawl spaces, the look on their face drastically changed.
Right.
You know, even in the old days, it was going from $15 an hour to 20. Well, in the old days, $20 an hour is quite a bit of money. And
Right.
that was what, 25% increase for being in that crawl. So,
Right.
but as far as being busy, we always said in our record keeping for what, 26 years, it's like somebody shut the light bulb out on January 15th, but March 15th it got turned back on. And this year I'm not so sure of that. Len and I, we run that special sale in January where you get the free manometer with
Yeah.
every fan purchase. So January is just furious. It's our biggest month of the year, but we count on February and part of March just to Lynn was trying to get a new catalog organized, and we were getting the website redone, things like that. But holy cow, this year it didn't really slow down even in February, not to the degree we thought it would.
No, no, I agree with you.
So I think it's all about the smart people are right. It's all about education.
It
You
is.
know,
It is.
yeah. If you're aware and have any belief, and we talked a little bit about last week. We don't need to get too far off target, but we talked a little bit last week about the people with the secrets, and Bruno was a guest speaker a few weeks ago, and I think
Hmm.
he told me he's up to 18 crews now, and probably on the way to 7,000 jobs a year. But the next week I said, well, what did everybody get out of that? And I led by saying what I got out of it was if you can find a way to get every household to test, then somebody in that household is going to bug them until they can't sleep at night until they get it fixed.
Right.
Because
Right.
depending on where you're at in topography, which we'll talk a little bit more about today, but wherever you're at, my particular area has 55 to 60% failure rate. Well, if every home was tested, that's a lot of homes to fix
Right.
because you can sure bet that I wouldn't want to guess at the percentage, but you can sure bet that it's not 50% of the 50% failure have been fixed.
Right. Right.
So what I took from it was that he'd worked very, very hard on establishing a program to get people to test and to involve them in the results and educate them if they needed to be educated. But the truth is, in today's world, if I didn't know a thing about radon, but somebody had created a system make it very easy for me to test my home, and I got those results back, and they said it was at an unsafe level. As a younger generation person, I'd be on that computer immediately. All right,
Mhm.
whatever this radon thing is, it's now saying I have an unsafe level in my home, so I better figure out what it is. And as soon as you figure out, well, holy cow, this is a big lung cancer problem, even bigger than secondhand smoke, even though they wouldn't identify it that far.
Right.
But this is a big lung cancer problem. I'm making a call tomorrow morning because I'm not going to have my kids in this house
Right.
if it's not safe.
Right.
Bang. So I think that he's done a very, very magical job of doing that. Very
Mhm.
good magical job of doing that. But as far as subject matter, we thought I've had a I've got to get better at writing down the complaint and the question list every week because, Don, as you know, I get calls all week from people. And Lynn, my daughter, keeps saying, Dad, I gave you a special notebook so you can write the question and answers all week, and you never use it. So I promised her I was going to change that. But I try to reflect a little bit on the questions of the week that I've had. But one of the questions I had was from a large mitigator, and he says, I would like to find a way. I'm looking at my books, and he's more of a businessman than he is a radon man. And he says, my books tell me that if I could reduce the callbacks by 10% or 20%, I'd put this many more dollars in my pocket. And would you please do that presentation? I said, well, let's do it, but let's do it in two parts. So Ben and I talked a little bit about it. I talked to Daryl Festa, get some suggestions too. But I've done presentations one-on-one and in other ways, I've done presentations for many, many years about how to possibly reduce your callbacks. But it's an open conversation here. So I can tell you that um, sort of as a leading thing, the idea of diagnostics and procedure and uh, mitigation in general is a very touchy subject because everybody's got their own ideas. And there's too many people out there saying this guy don't know what he's talking about. Here's a better idea. Well, I can say this. I'll say a couple things about that. The whatever works for you. But I can't say, Don, here's what you need to do because you have a different topography than I do.
Mhm.
I've got people that have topographies where they don't even know what a sump pump is. You know what I mean? I got people in topographies where uh, every single home is a simple home, what I call
Mhm.
a no-brainer that I beg to get every other one. And then
Yeah.
I've got people in topographies where all the houses are very large footprint mansions. Uh, and so, and then you get the timber soil, you get the Carolinas, you get the Atlantas, you get the Alaska. How am I supposed to tell my customers in Alaska how to fix their homes? I give them all the information and suggestions I can, but I like to first start these conversations by saying all over the United States is different topographies and different style homes. And so each one is unique and each area has different challenges. I've always said the central Illinois area is a horrible area to be a radon guy because It's got some of the most fertile soil in the world. It's said to be statistically one of the most fertile places in the world, but you get about 4 feet down, and all you get's wet clay.
Yep. Yep.
And so, it's very difficult. I always tell people if I'm giving a class, if you put a bucket of wet clay in there and you stick a vacuum cleaner in it, it isn't going to pull much, and nor is it going to pull much out of a bucket of sand.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so, uh,
David, before you
so
get,
uh,
can you hear me?
go,
Before you get too far into it, just make sure that you're defining. I know I put it in the email, and I said, reducing callbacks. I don't know if everyone calls it that. So, like, if
yes,
you want to define what you're going to talk about, I know we talked a little bit, about obviously just not passing, but there's obviously some other things as well. But uh, like, put that up top so everyone knows what we got. Some people on Facebook as well. So what you're covering today.
good point, Ben, because one of the good things about Ben and I's relationship is he can keep me on track because that is going to be a little bit more of a subject next week. It leads into diagnostics. So this week we're going to talk a little bit more about just the general things that I know people get called back over, and it's as simple as uh, the most common things that you get called back on, and we all know callbacks are money losers. Uh, uh, and the biggest things
But
that create callbacks are, first of all, everybody likes to complain about the noise of the fan.
yeah, you're
So
just
any
even on a higher level. We're saying the job is done. You've left. You've cashed the check, and the customer is calling you back for some reason. Like, so that's what we're.
right,
So you are going back to the property for some reason. So now
correct, yes.
that's what we're talking about. Okay.
And the number one thing they're going to do is call you back and say, "Why is this fan noisy?" Well, it just seems that it just seems to be something people don't expect. People are going to call you back and ask you what the manometer means. Uh, People are going to call you back and they're going to say, "Hey, you sealed up this bin here that holds my sump pump. Now I don't have any idea uh, what I do if it quits or how I'm going to know if it quits. What do you want me to do here? Can you come show me how I do that?" And then another thing is the things you accidentally leave there. I mean, I've left everything from a ladder on the side of the house to a tape measure on a shelf, but it's as you think about the things you're going to get called back for, uh, I think another thing that is high on the list, and we're going to cover this more next week, is it's too easy for a consumer to have a uh, what we still refer to as a homeowner test device. I think there's got to be a better word for that that's either there or coming, but too many consumers have them. And so when they see fluctuation, or if they call you up and say, "Hey, my homeowner device tells me that my numbers are still high." So I think one of the ways we get called back uh, is numbers too high or numbers fluctuating. So I think that there's a lot of things that we were fortunate in the fact that we didn't do much real estate work, because all my customers that do a lot of real estate work, they're like, "Well, I never meet the customers. So how am I supposed to cover any of this with them?" And my comment is, I like to leave a very encouraging note that says, "Please call me." Somehow or another, it's a free call. Please call me so I can um, fill you in on a radon system and how it works. And I think that people misjudge that kind of thing. And they're like, "Well, I don't really want all those phone calls. I'd like to have my supper with my family. And I'm not looking forward to all those phone calls," but it gives you such an opening. I have a good friend that used to say, anytime the word radon's mentioned, negative or positive, it's a positive. But if you find a way to leave enough paperwork to encourage that consumer to call you back, if it's a home where you haven't met the final owner, then you're going to offer them a walkthrough over the phone.
It's also a
And
great
if that's not
opportunity to
sat,
ask for the review when you've got them
well,
on the phone.
good,
So sneak that in there.
really good point, Ben, because we discuss almost every week how important reviews are. It gives you so many opportunities because I've been in situations where the consumer, no matter how I explain it on the phone, and I'll even have them walk around the system and me explain it as they're walking around. Some of them are still timid enough that they say, I'd really feel better if you came over and explained this. Well, in the first place, you can get a service call for it, at least enough to cover your time, but it gives you a perfect opportunity to say, you know what? That's a good idea. Do you belong to any church group or any luncheon group or any amount of friends that might be interested too? Because I won't charge you a thing. If you guys want to know more about it, why don't you have a few of your friends over while we do it?
Now,
And
you didn't
so,
do this when you had your business, but it's getting easier and easier. For those of you guys that don't want that phone call at night, shoot a video. Take it, do a selfie video, or have your assistant hold your phone for you, and you can shoot a video and you can send it to them, and you can explain, the different spots on there. So then they can go back and reference it later too. So. Or ask them, hey, if you're not going to be home when I'm done, would you like me to shoot a video about this? I can kind of show you, what each thing is, and you can walk outside. You can walk inside, and the nice thing about that is that keeps them from monopolizing your time. So you always have some people that like to talk and talk and talk and talk, and you may lose an hour on that person where you can control the conversation and just kind of have a checklist in your mind, or an actual checklist saying, I'm going to talk about the manometer. I'm going to talk about the sumplet. I'm going to talk about, hey, if you need to get into your sump and you break this seal, you need to call us back, like put that all into a video. And you could, if you really wanted to, you could just shoot that one time and send that out. And so you could shoot it at your house and explain, because it's going to look similar. Hey, if you have a crawl space, it's going to look like this. If you have a fan here, some pump here, if you have a water, whatever. But that's a way of sending that to the client, even in an email later, saying this is what, talk about efficiencies that can speed things up for you. So an option.
well, and technology is really helped the situation. I a little bit more old fashioned and ran my business before the technology was there as much as it is now. But I think that I also believe that any way you could get a group together, and there's very few people that you're going to talk to that aren't part of some kind of a group. It could be the VFW, it could be just a woman's luncheon group, it could be church, it could be a library club, but once they're comfortable with you, then you may have an opportunity there. And we work very hard, as I've said several times, to differentiate ourselves and do consumers instead of real estate transactions. But you have to work at it, and you have to have the right mindset. But Ben is absolutely right. Now technology can make it even better. And most of we've got videos. Ben started shooting videos of us, what, 10, 12 years ago. And we got videos I get calls daily saying, boy, I love your videos. And I'm like, how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of video minutes have been watched of them? I don't know. But it's because I had Ben around. We just introduced a new one last week, the one from the American Lung Association, or a couple weeks ago. Uh, but but not to get too far off subject, but I can tell you that, as I said, you're going to get complaints about noise. And so anytime you can talk to the consumer before you do the job, that's nice too. So in other words, if you've got a list of what have I got down here, the 7 things that you're going to get complaints about, it's sure nice to meet the consumer, because my my theory was I'm walking in there with them 7 things on my list, and I'm going to go talk to the consumers while the guys are putting the tarps down and unloading the truck. I'm going to be talking to that consumer because I'm going to cover them 7 things that I know they're going to want to call me about, because it's like a broken record. Don, you can attest to this, but it's like a broken record. You get the same 7 or 8 questions every time. And so my big thing was to try to answer them ahead of time. And as I was saying, that's easy when you're meeting the consumer that's going to live there. But there was also things that helped. I'm going to explain the noise, and I'm going to say, look, we're going to put a big enough fan on here to do the job. And it may be a little noisy, but you will more than likely get used to it, and it will reduce your chances of lung cancer. So, there you are. Uh, I was, and you guys need to help me with this. I'm probably, well, I know I am. I'm the second largest manufacturer of manometers in the world, but I say over and over again, I wish it was A, B, C, and D instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, because 50% of the people with the radon system thinks that's their radon numbers. And I'm like, I put it on the labels. This is not, all my labels have a warning about that, but it's a small label. And so I feel like putting a 9 by 11 piece of paper right next to having my own label made right next to the manometer and say, please don't assume this is your radon numbers, because you do get a lot of calls in the future of people saying, hey, I thought my radon was low because that oil thing told me it was low, and now I find out it wasn't. And so I guess he gives you there's 1 and 2. Please tell them there'll be a little noise involved, but you're also going to have much less chance of lung cancer. Uh, this manometer, please remember, it tells you whether it's on or not, but it isn't going to tell you what your radon numbers are. Also remember that when this manometer reads 0, if it's a power outage or an ice storm, it's going to read 0 for a little while. So don't call me immediately, so to speak. A sump lid, how many times have I preached to everybody on this at Viewport? If you do have a consumer there, or if you have a consumer that contacts you after, or if you have the video made that Ben's talking about, I got videos out there showing me removing a Viewport all over the place, and they get lots of attention. But it is a great thing to address, because like I say all the time, when I talk to builders, they will tell me that on their final walkthrough with a new homeowner, that's their number one question, because all new homes in my area at least come with a sealed lid. And the consumer's number one question is, how am I supposed to know if this sump pump quits? So I put a Viewport in for them, and the builder's able to go over to that consumer and say, well, here's how you will find out. Your radon person that we hired before you bought this house put this in for us. So, and then as I write down, you're going to get callbacks if you start forgetting tools and such. And we almost had a double check sign off system. And we always told guys, don't ever put a hammer or tape measure or anything on a shelf, or you'll forget it every time. Put it on the floor where you're going to trip over it, or you'll forget it. And as I said, I've even walked away from jobs and said, hey, where's the ladder the next morning when I got to the next job? Oh, it's still on the side of the house at the last job. And so, when I spoke to Daryl about it this morning, Daryl Festa, I said, well, what would your contribution be? And it was mostly maybe the next week's subjects when we talk about how quality of work and getting that fan level is so important and that kind of thing. But remember, one of the biggest things you're going to get called back for is a house just simply not getting low enough. If you're in one of those areas like Central Illinois where you get the challenging homes, you're going to get called back. I don't know. 1 out of 20 is going to call you back and say, hey, my homeowner monitor here, which they were a great invention, but they made us all more honest. And the people that I love them myself, but we have to answer questions about variation. We have to answer questions about, could you get it lower? It's still 1.9. Is there any way I could get lower than that? That kind of thing. So you're going to get calls about the picocuries per liter too. So you got to have those answers. Um, and let's see what else I wrote. Uh, I wrote that one reason that I like to oversize a fan slightly is we get calls from people that say, I get calls nowadays from mitigators, and what am I supposed to tell somebody when they've got their crinium or the radon eye, and they say, well, now wait a minute, it rained all day yesterday, and my numbers went up to 3. He says, I keep trying to explain things to him, and I'm like, well, this industry has done a lot to encourage uh, using economic fans. In other words, for a long time they were preaching us that we were using too big a fan, and I think most of you know that some of the things coming out of the main part of the industry. Ben will stop me here, that I don't necessarily agree with, but I always fought that use a smaller fan mentality and save energy mentality, because a little bit larger fan will certainly um, help the fluctuation chart. So I'm not saying that any fan can totally stop it, but I would much rather have a fan that was slightly oversized that would slow that curve down. So if it rained all day, instead of it going from 1.5 to 3, a little bit larger fan could very easily take it from 1.5 to 2. So remember that. Remember, as I said, we're going to get into this a little more next week when we talk about fan usage, but quality of work uh, was plays a big part too, and quality of work goes a long ways in consumer satisfaction. It goes a long ways in getting those reviews that Ben wants you all to get, and it goes a long ways to reliability of product. We also know, I haven't touched on fan failure. Big callback for fan failure. The manufacturers all work pretty hard. It doesn't pay them to have fan failures, but we know that's part of it. But I can tell you that quality of work, from being a distributor all these years and having so many customers, I can tell you the highest quality installers are also have the lowest percentage of failures. And so there's some theories I have about that. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But quality of work is so important for so many aspects of this industry. And a lot of the years I was involved in it, uh, because it was so tightly attached to the radon, to the real estate industry, it bred the idea of economic work. Well, if the seller and that seller's realtor are looking for the lowest price they can get, I always said you can't do cheap work for very long until the quality has to match. So that's a subject we have almost every week. But I can tell you that quality of work seems to have a big um, influence on callbacks for so many reasons that I preach it over and over again, that you can't afford not to have quality of work. So what do you got to add, Ben, based on
Well, we
those?
are going into a tornado warning. That
Is it
if you
really?
can hear all the things going off.
Oh
I
my
don't know if you're
gosh,
getting that
I'm seeing on
over
my
by
on
you or
my
not.
computer
I
it's
just lost
saying
my
something.
audio. That's crazy. As soon as that happened, hold on one second.
Should we both walk away for a minute and see what's happening?
Let me see. Hold on one second.
Yeah, I'm getting
So,
things popping up on my computer, and I'm sure hearing the rain.
well, in between, there we go. What happened is it switched because the tornado warning went off on my phone, it switched to my oh, there's the sirens now. I have a basement, so
Well, maybe we should postpone this thing and catch up on it later. I'm
yeah.
hearing
Why
some
don't
severe weather.
yeah.
Isn't that funny? This will go down in history, but everybody, I think we better close this thing out. We're getting tornado warnings, Ben and I here in
Yeah.
Bloomington. Let's see if we can catch this. We're definitely coming back next week, but we'll cover this subject no matter what it takes. But we're going to go.
All right, sounds
Thanks.
good, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.
We will see you next week. We'll continue it on Facebook. Thank you, guys.